Brian Radojcic, this is the first time you are discussing your airplane accident in public. Your instructor died. You survived after spending 8 days in the hospital and then being bedbound at home for 2 months. You graduated to a walker, then a cane, and 1 full year of physical therapy to fully recover. And now you're here. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You hold a private pilot certificate and instrument rating airplane. You're a very successful mechanical and software engineer. You were a member of the team that designed the incubator for premature born babies. And you also designed the software and developed the coding found in many slot machines and gaming software all over the United States, Spain, and Peru. You've been married 35 years and your daughter recently graduated with her graduate degree from England. You were born and raised in Yugoslavia. Denise pogrešio.
Yeah, that's very good.
You lived in Canada for 20 years and now you reside in sunny South Florida. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me.
How did all this start? This started in Yugoslavia. You know, I didn't know much about Yugoslavia until I met you. So it was very interesting just learning about your culture. And, you know, one of my favorite basketball players, do you know Nikola Jovic?
Nikola Jokic.
Excuse me. Denise pogrešio.
Yeah, Nisam.
I've seen him fight on the basketball court, and not without provocation. And there's a bunch of clips online of him in every situation I've seen. There was an attempt to bully him and an immediate, swift, certain, and severe response, which I think is good. You know, it really shows strength. And not only that, rightfully so. You're bullied, you respond, and it seems to not be a one-off. It seems that it's a cultural thing. It's a not being pushed over thing. And I saw that when I was in Serbia. So where does that come from? Where does that, I'm not going to get pushed around, traditional cultural strength come from?
I don't think there is a one answer to it, you know, but to know the future or to understand the present, you sometimes want to go to the past. And back, I don't know what century, Ottoman Empire from Turkey moved and conquered half the Europe and whatever, and it was really big area. And they ruled that area for about 500 years. So it wasn't like a war of 3 months or 4 years. You know, they ruled the area 500 years. So when they moved in, basically, it was always religious issues in that region, and I guess everywhere in the world there is always religion involved somehow. So, and that's part of Yugoslavian breakup too. You know, the way country was divided and whatever. But in particular, when they moved in, it was a Muslim religion, and they offered to the peasants to change the religion to Muslim, change their names, last names, whatever, and offered peasants to continue living on their land and just pay taxes being paid in their crops, I don't know, you know. So, and don't fact check me on all of this. This is something that they taught us in a school when I was there in a school, and that they taught us this part of the history, which, you know, winners always get to write the history. So at that time, that's what we were taught in a school. And I didn't bother much reading after that. So part or tribes at that time accepted it, accepted the offer, and continued working and living normally, and other parts did not. And in particular, most of the Serbia or Serbs rebelled to that, and Montenegro even more. So you have now and these tribes moved in the mountains and keep on fighting for years, for centuries, until Ottoman Empire was pushed from Austro-Hungarian or whatever, Austrians and all of that stuff. Rest of the Europe pushed them out. So I guess these 500 years of being suppressed and fighting out of the mountains like animals, you know, brought that toughness into the nation, if you want. And then later, after Second World War and all of that, that was a communist country. Even though they didn't want to say it's communist country, they were saying we are in a socialism period. Socialism period being transition period between capitalism and communism. So the government was saying we are a socialist country, even though the communist party in a country was strong. Actually, the only party that I know of, you know, never heard of any other party at that time. So with this communism, you know, ruling the country, there is also certain toughness where people don't have freedom. People don't have everything, a lot of necessities. So now, if you don't have it, if you don't have that freedom, if you don't have all goods that you just take as a granted in the United States, you kind of have to fight for it. So all that, you know, cultural and toughness, I think, is drawn to those hundreds of years and political situation in a country. So you are forced to fight for something if you really want it. You know, I mean, this fight might be in any other, you know, any other ways, but I think that toughness comes from that. Also, it's deep embedded this sense of pride. You know, we were never conquered. You know, so I think what you see through Jovic, I, in many ways, could explain it only in that way.
When did you leave Serbia? Or at the time, it was still Yugoslavia.
Still Yugoslavia, you know. Even right now, you know, when people ask me, where are you from, you know, I say I'm Yugoslavian. And why am I saying I'm Yugoslavian? Because I was born in that country, and I left that country. And I left that country in late 80s before all of these wars and breakup of the country. So I'm Serb, really. I'm Serbian. But I left in late 80s, and I left to Canada. And I live and work in the United States since 2006. Yeah, and I'm happy to say that I left before those wars. And at that time, Yugoslavia was basically union of 6 republics, they call them, and 2 territories. So that war really caused the whole country to break up. And all of those republics that they call them, you would call it the states in the United States, became separate country, you know. And I always thought of it as a stupid move. I never really, nobody likes any war, but I always thought that was something horrible that happened for those people in that region because, in my opinion, United States is the biggest country, strongest country, best country to live in the world. And I'm saying that with full heart. I live here and I know what this country represents in the world and what kind of a life this country is able to provide its citizens. But then that begs the question, why is United States the strongest country in the world? And in my mind, the name explains it all. United. Because United States are united, that's why it's the strongest country. You can see that notion through the world. You know, Europe is trying to get united and all of that. Why? To become stronger. But yet Yugoslavia falls apart. You know, they break up, not being united anymore. And I think that weakened up every one of those republics, whatever countries they are calling right now. So the war is always a disaster for its people, for its country, unless you have to defend yourself against somebody.
And so you said you went to Canada. What part of Canada?
I originally went in Ontario, in Ottawa. And I went there because I had an uncle. And my uncle, I still have it. I said he's still alive. But my uncle happened to be a scientist, and he has a doctorate, his PhD in a chemistry. So basically, he did his doctorate in Marseille, France, and then he worked at university in Zagreb in Croatia, and then he came back, worked in Zagreb, then he went to work in London, England for some university, and finally he went into Canada. But at that time, late 80s, the situation in Yugoslavia was horrible, horrible. Economy was collapsing, you know. I never thought there would be a war, but you know, I remember when I left, my salary was like 3 million Yugoslavian dinars, and for those 3 million dinars, I didn't have even enough money for the gas for a car.
3 million Yugoslavian. Okay.
Right, but so if you're talking about those numbers, 3 million, you have 3 million of this currency, and it hardly covered the gas that you need. But the thing is, you could sense that, and I could sense that that I would not have a future there. I had a job already, and I was working, and I just didn't see any path where I could establish my family, get married, get the children, you know, and live anywhere else but with my parents and people that got, my friends that got married before. That's exactly where we're ending up. Now, my uncle moved to Canada. He became professor at Ottawa University. And one day we were talking on the phone, and he said, "Look, maybe you want to apply, and maybe you wanna come to live in Canada. I will sponsor you." So I thought it's a good idea, and I at least I wanted to try. And at that time, you would set up an appointment in Canadian Embassy in Belgrade, and they would give you some kind of interview, and they would give you a piece of paper, one sheet of paper with many questions on it. And these questions were mostly numbers, or, you know, it wasn't an essay to write. For example, you know, how many years of education you have. You can't, you know, write about that. You just put it. So questions like your age, are you married or not, years of education, were basically basic questions like that. And the last one was, and every question would carry certain points. And at that time, if you are not married, for example, you would receive more points than if you were married. Why? Because now you have to support the wife and the children. You know, do you have children and stuff like that? So the last question was, do you have somebody to sponsor you when you arrive to Canada? So, of course, my answer was yes, and I filled up the name and everything else. His application was already there. That's why I was interviewed. So with all of that, some of the points, you had to be 40 points or over, and I was. And they told me, okay, you know, we're going to send you some information. You're going to have to go prove that you were vaccinated, tetanus, not tetanus, tuberculosis, this, that. And then your bill of health had to be clean. And you're going to receive your, in Canada, it's not a green card, but let's say green card. So I got it in a mail. And I had 6 months to enter the country. After that offer wasn't valid. And that's how I wound up in Canada. So first 3 months I lived with my uncle. And basically, this didn't matter what I was doing in Yugoslavia at that time. I was an engineer already. My first job, like, I arrived on a Saturday or something like that. And on Monday, my aunt found me a job in local McDonald's. So 3 months I worked in McDonald's from 6 to whatever, 6 o'clock at night. And 7 o'clock at night I was going in this government-provided school for English as a second language. That was a couple hours, come back home, get up again, and 3 months I was doing that. And after 3 months I kind of felt more comfortable to apply in my position, you know, for my job. So I sent some resumes, and I got offered to work in Montreal, Quebec. And after 3 months, I moved from my uncle and never looked back. You know, I moved to Montreal.
Did you speak any English or French when you got to Canada?
Zero French, and my English was horrible. Horrible. I mean, I don't know is my English good now, but at that time, very little, big struggle. Now, what saved me and how I got the job is that I got engineering job to work in this company in pulp and paper industry. They were designing these machines that are actually designing these pulp and paper industry machines. It's a machine size of this building with different sections. So if you're an engineer, you know, then your language is more mathematics. Your language is more like design. And I brought some examples of designs that I did previously, and that was enough to get me a job. What happened from there, my trade was at that time mechanical engineering. And basically, when was it? I would say I got married in 1989 to my wife, love of my life, my life partner, and in about 1990 or about that time, I went once to work one day, and my colleague tells me that yesterday he bought this computer, and I freaked out. You bought a computer. But at that time, the only time I saw computer was at university in Belgrade. So I didn't even think that it's possible that you as a private citizen can even own this thing, you know. So I asked him, and he told me where he bought it. I went home all excited, and I told my wife, we're going to eat and we are going to buy this computer. So we went, and we traveled. Actually, it was some suburb in Montreal, and I bought this computer, brought it home. And I really fell in love with it. But at the same time, after a few weeks working with it, I was very disappointed too. And I was disappointed because this computer didn't do what I expected it that will do, nor what I wanted it to do. So at that point, I said, okay, if that is not available, then I'm going to create the programs and make this computer do what I want it. So that set me off to buying some books, studying some books, and many times, later on, I didn't need the whole book, but I will need a chapter from the book. And my wife and I, we would go to the bookstore, and she would be waiting for me just until I read this chapter, and I put book back on a shelf, and I learn it now. And then we were driving in different libraries and universities, and you name it, And then I really became good at it because, first of all, I had a good background in mathematics, and second of all, I was really excited about it. I loved it, and I started to study different computer languages because in every language there is a way to express yourself in a certain way, and the way you speak French, so you know that in a French you can express yourself in totally different way than you would do it in English language. And you have a different computer languages that you would use for different applications. So I started to study that. And then I opened up a company and I started to write the programs which people were buying. And after a few years, I realized that I do have this knowledge, but I do not have a formal education. So I went back to school, and I went to Concordia University in Montreal, computer science program. 4.5 years it took me, and I was working, and at night going to school, most nightly courses, and I graduated. So ever since, I'm really working only, basically mid-90s, whatever, I'm working only with the software, as software engineering.
At that time, you're a software engineer. What did you engineer past that?
I worked on a lot of projects. Like my early beginnings were designing. My first job was actually designing incubators for premature babies, medical equipment, and that was still mechanical engineering. And after that, it was in Canada, I started to do the pulp and paper industry machines. Then I worked in telecommunication industry, designing the combiners. And combiners, telecommunication, for example, if you are watching a football game and comes a commercial, they would show you a commercial from here, from Florida, from Miami, you know. They would not show, and even though the game is played in Ohio, maybe, you know, so they wouldn't show you a local commercial in Ohio, but they would show you a commercial from Florida. And this combiner switches the signals, and that's how it basically works. So I was designing those, but through all of this, I kind of flirted with my own business. I always believed that I will be better off, and actually mostly by encouragement of my wife, you know, that I would be much better off if I would be working for myself, working as a contractor and so on. So I would say sometime mid-90s or so, I opened up my own software company and started to write my own software, work as a contractor and what have you. And I wound up designing the slot machines, software mathematics for slot machines, mathematical models, and for the games that are very similar to slot machines and so on. So the rest of my career was pretty much that, designing the games for casinos and whatever.
That's fascinating work. Can you just describe when you're in pediatrics, you developed the software for the incubators for premature babies. What's involved in that? Can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, sure. At that time, again, I didn't do the software. I was doing mechanical engineering. Basically, incubator for premature baby is essentially a very simple device. It is basically a plexiglass cubicle, plexiglass dome, where you have to create this perfect environment for this baby to survive. And when I say perfect environment, you have to provide certain temperature, certain humidity of the air. You have to provide a clean air. You have to provide a means to add more oxygen if it's needed, and basically create this artificial perfect environment for this baby to survive. And basically, working on that for me was at the times tough, you know. Tough in a sense that I believe you never saw the premature born baby that is 7 months old and it was born, or baby that was born with the problems, with the heart issue, with the lungs issue. You wouldn't believe what's out there. So as part of this work, you know, they would send us sometime on these shifts where we would monitor the parameters of the incubators and performance of the incubator, and we would be logging it. So after that, we would bring it, then sometimes it would be all-night thing. You know, we were doing it 24/7. You get the night shift, you do that. So we would bring it to the office for analysis, and we would analyze performance of our product. And I really believe that if there is a hell on the earth, then it is in any given hospital pediatric department. When you see these children, sick children, and oh my God, you know, and I wasn't trained for that, you know, I just have no words to describe that. It was tough part.
From there, you went directly into gaming, meaning writing the codes for slot machines. That's the software you developed?
Yes. Well, from there, it was these steps I described, and then I started to write some kind of a simulators. Even it took a little progression to come to the software for slot machines, and machines like slot machines that are not slot machines. So because they have a different engine, different math models, and so on. But that part, you know, I was introduced by this gentleman in Canada, and we became partners. And it happened that he owned 2 home-built airplanes. So he was always somehow a mentor to me, because he was maybe 10 years older than I am. And he was mentor to me in a gaming industry, and mentor to me somebody that I really enjoy flying with. So to tell you the truth, going into the gaming industry, into the gambling with the software, jump from medical equipment, where all of us need some kind of a sense of belonging. Doesn't matter where this sense of belonging come from. Sense of belonging can be I'm an American. It's a sense of belonging. Or I'm a football fan. I'm a Dolphins football fan. It's sense of belonging. You're from this institution, school. You're from Berichi Aviation. It's a sense of belonging. I belong to somewhere. I'm somebody. So from when you're working with this medical equipment, you have this sense of belonging that you're part of the team. That cohesion. Right. That you're designing a product which is really helping people. Above all, these children. Now, when you go into the gaming industry, gambling, there's not much sense of belonging. So at that time, I had a struggle. My own struggle. What am I doing with my career? What am I doing with my talent, with my time, with all of these things? So he really explained to me. His name is Bill. I don't want to use last names. Unfortunately, Bill passed from COVID, and he's no longer with us. But he said to me, Brian, you're not really in a gambling industry. You are in entertainment industry. He said, tonight you can take $20 and go and see a movie. And I don't know how much are tickets these days for a movie, but you're going to buy licorice, you're going to buy popcorn, you're going to get your soda, you are there, you're watching the movie, and might happen that you don't even like the damn thing. So you wasted your money. Same way, you can take your $20, you can go tonight to Seminole Casino, you can play it, and if this machine provides you in form of entertainment, then, you were entertained for your money. Moreover, if you win $2,000, you're going to be pretty happy. So don't think about this industry in those terms. Think about this industry in a form that you're in a form of entertainment. And that kind of helped me transition.
You're the software engineer that designs the slot machines, the coding. We all have one question. Which slot machine should we play?
Okay. Basically, when it comes to slot machines, there are different jurisdictions. Las Vegas being the one that is mostly regulated. Most of them are regulated. There are some gray machines out there that are comme ci, comme ça in French. But Vegas would be the most regulated machine. And on average, every slot machine have a return to the player, RTP, Romeo Tango Papa, of 92%. And every time I say this to people, they're like, what? This machine returning 92%? Well, yes, it's true, But let's play the game. You give me $1, and I'll return 92 cents to you. Let's play all night, and let's see what happens. How much money are you going to have after we are done playing all night?
I can't quantify that, but I can tell you every time I walk to the casino, all I see is people playing slot machines, getting their ass handed to them all night.
Some people win. Let's be honest. Some people do hit the jackpot and some people win. Now, the thing is, again, if you're designing a game, you have to make that game entertaining. It's not just spinning the reels. You have different bonuses, different, let's call it a sub game or whatever. We call it a bonus, or something that would offer to the player a little bit higher payment and higher reward. And make no mistake, it's very difficult to make the software for, and especially math model, where you can win, right? You really truly can win. But how to create a software that keeps somebody occupied 30 minutes or we call that time in a seat, 30 minutes or an hour, and that person keep on putting the money in that machine. How do you keep that person occupied? How to keep that person entertained? So that is the big question. You're trying to design a machine that is immersive, at the same time that can reward you something back. But from my experience, if you are winning a little, walk away. That's my advice. That's the only way to make money. But if you're not ready to lose that $20 or whatever your budget may be, do not play. Please do not play.
What kind of probabilities are we talking about?
Like I said, the average probability is 92%. Now, there are different machines. For example, I'm saying Vegas, 92%. I think the strip...
92% chance of winning.
Oh, no, sorry, return to the player.
Return,
that's what I thought.
So yeah, your RTP.
Oh, now the thing is this. Let me just say this about RTP. When I say Vegas, Vegas is a big city. It's a lot of things there. So I'm talking about Strip, Vegas Strip. They're going to give you high returns, 92%, because they want to drum up the whole thing. And mind you, even in Vegas, the gambling is not anymore the major source of the money. Believe it or not, those shows that they have, entertainment with the shows you have, Rod Stewart show, whatever you have, that is probably bigger revenue maker than gambling. But at the same time, airport in Vegas is also a Vegas, right? In airport, machine is not going to return you 92%. It's going to be much lower. If you play the same machine on a cruise ship, same machine, same game, you might get back 80 or 88%. So why is that? If you have a machine where you have a returning customers, your RTP gonna go higher. If you have a machine which is at the airport, when this customer is not really returning customer, he's just wasting his time to go to wait for his flight. Or cruise ship people, they're really not returning customers, so they might come back next year. So of course RTP would be lower. Now, probability of winning. The old trick with slot machines is basically you bet $1 and you win, but you might win 50 cents, or you bet 25 cents and you might win much less than that. So they call it a win when it's actually a loss. And they are saying depending on the game designers, some designers say, okay, if you put $20 in this machine, you at least should see one bonus. But to win something huge, a huge jackpot, $1 million jackpot, you probably have a better chance to be hit by thunder, especially here in Florida.
Get hit by lightning,
yeah,
sure. Did you ever have an instance where you got a call from a client, a casino that you write the software for slot machines, and say, someone won too big, can you change the coding?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I can. I hate those calls, and somehow those calls come probably at Saturday 8 p.m. Or Sunday 10 p.m. Somebody won, blah 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 blah. And a lot of people don't understand one thing: that those that operate these machines, you need people to win too. You can't just take the money. It's not the Coca-Cola machine, where you sell this product and machine's going to generate this much money. You need people to win. And every time, even though that call is, unwanted, I always try to explain to the operators that people need to win. And trust me, that person that won gonna usually tell everybody else that they won. And that's going to even attract more people to play, and they will, hopefully generate their money back. But somebody has to win. You can't just, design the machine and take money. So it's a part of the game.
What's the biggest someone won?
In my machines, not much, because most of the jurisdictions of the software that I had to write, usually customer gives you specifications, and they ask you for a top win. So let's say people are normally playing 25 cents, and you get to win $8,000. Wins like that. But if you're playing 25 cents and you win $8,000, it's a lot of money. But never ever nobody won. I mean, with machines that I designed, at least there wasn't any win like millions or whatever. No, didn't do that. So let me tell you something. It's a style of policing. This is what I mean by style of policing. You know, the thing is, first of all, you know, when you come up with a law, if you don't police that law, what happens? Nobody respects it. It's not policed. Here in the United States, for example, you kind of roll through the stop sign, right? You don't really stop, or most of the time don't stop. At least I don't, so maybe I just kind of slow down, roll through it. You do that in Canada, you're gonna get a ticket. Trust me, you're gonna get a ticket for that. They give you a ticket for jaywalking. You know, is that how you say jaywalk across the street? So they police that very seriously. In Canada, stop sign mean stop. No like a roll, no good drive slower. Stop. If you're alone and it's 3 a.m. and nobody's around you, you may get that ticket. Why? Because some cop is in the bushes there looking at you. Now in States that's not the case. In Serbia or Yugoslavia at that time, and I lived in Serbia, when you come with any kind of like clash with police or whatever, if you're in trouble with police, even if you're just questioned for something, you're going to get beating, number one. You're going to get beating, and it's not like this secret beating. They're going to beat you with this telephone book. So there is no, bruises. They're going to beat the shit out of you. You're going to remember that beating forever. So you're homeless and batting people downtown, you're going to get beating. Somebody's going to get slapped.
Whoever's involved here.
Right. Well,
the procedure is.
Right. Somebody's getting slapped, for sure. Especially if they take you to police station or something like that. Never happened to me, thank you, God.
But that was the SOP that you saw.
Like, if something will happen, they would show up, somebody would get beat up the way in a car. With the billy clubs, whatever, is that how you call those
the baton?
Things? Yeah. Baton, yeah. You would get beating in a car.
It's part of the
There's
interview.
no like, sir, please sit down, don't hit your head. No, man, you are getting in that car, whatever. So police, I would say, was very brutal at that time. And I would not believe that much changed now, So I think in these countries, you have in some of the Muslim countries, they have a laws that if you steal with your right hand, they're going to cut it off. So there are some brutal laws. It's not the case in Yugoslavia. It wasn't ever. But if you come in some kind of altercation with police, you're getting beat. You're going to get beat up, period. And there's nobody to complain to about it, So that fear from police, it's a different thing. Also, even though the laws are beautifully written and that never should happen to you and all of that, and you have your rights, blah, 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 that's not even respected. It's a joke, So I would say over there, you are guilty until you prove that you're innocent, not the other way around like here, And I think that keeps the people in a fear that suppress the people. But mind you, in Belgrade, there's a lot of crime. A lot of crime. Maybe not in the parts of the city where you grow up, but I remember myself growing up there. It was brutal being a kid, really brutal. So it's like, if I would compare it to something, it would be like projects in Bronx or whatever, So you had to fist fight for every day almost in a school, or else you're not going to have your lunch money. They would take your running shoes. They would take your jacket, So it wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. All rights that you have as a citizen. So I kind of like to believe that that's not the case in the United States, that you are innocent until they prove you're guilty, But maybe I'm naive to believe that, that is really how it's going on in the justice system. And you're a professor in justice system, so you know much more than I do.
I've seen it go both ways. Do you feel there's more of a sense of community here where you live now, or when you lived in Canada, or when you lived in Yugoslavia? in the context, sense of community where people are looking out for one another?
You see, that's an excellent question. That's really an excellent question. What I see here, for example, I see that Latin community is very tight. When you go down to the beach, you see huge families together with the barbecue and all of that stuff. So I think that family tightness is maybe bigger than what I see with the other around here. So in Canada, families are kind of a close. I think depend really on ethnicity. My wife's family from Italian side, they were really tight and close. Half of them live here in Florida, and every Thanksgiving, every July 4th, the Christmas we spend together, and it's all family together. Very tight. Her Scottish side is not as closed, close. So if I would look at the countries, I would say that this family tightness or whatever culture tightness was maybe the most emphasized in Yugoslavia. But that's my experience. It doesn't have to be that way. I don't want people to see or hear what I say and, this is how it is. This is from my perception.
It's your experience.
Yes, my experience.
Yeah. With that, let's take a break. When we get back, I want to get into your airplane accident.
Roger that.
All right, Brian. Well, we're back from the break. I read your accident investigation. Spin, loss of directional control, which when I read your aviation investigation report, what I'm surprised at is on the cover, it doesn't say mechanical failure. And the second thing about it that surprises me is that you're sitting in front of me and that you're alive. I've read through a lot of NTSB reports. This is the first one from Canada. And you never get to hear it from the horse's mouth. What happened that day?
That was quite experience. It happened on July 18, 1998, in Montreal, actually west of Montreal, Canada, Quebec. I started to fly maybe a month before that. Flying was always my love, and like most of us have towards aviation, and I always wanted to be a pilot. And finally, I got somehow financial means and support of my wife to do it. I mean, she was supporting me and pushing me to achieve my dream forever. But I felt that we finally have a financial means for me to actually go and do it. And actually, I was driving somewhere and returning home, and I was passing the airport where I wanted to start flying. It's called Saint-Lazare. It's an airport west of Montreal, west of my house. And last minute, I took the exit, And I went there, and this as I walked through the doors, there was this young gentleman. His name was David. I would keep it just that name out of that respect. And he was there with, how can I help you? And I told him, I'm here. I would like to start my private pilot training. He's like, by all means, you're in the right place. This is a good school. I asked him, are you a flight instructor? He said yes. And we kind of clicked. And he, walked me through what I need to do, the process. And I think following day, I was there. I was sold. I was so happy, that finally I'm on a path to achieve my lifelong dream. So we started the training, and I did my first solo in 10 hours. So after that solo, I had to do, I think, 3 hours of touch and goes alone. And that was done. I had a total of 13 hours of flying, and came spin training day. So I showed up at the airport. It was Saturday, 8 a.m. Like I said, July 18, 1998. I will never forget that day. And he was there already. We were first in a school. School had probably 5-6 Cessnas 152 and few Cessnas 172, but I was training with Cessna 152. And procedure was, we had those suitcases there, whatever, the bags with the papers. We grabbed it. We went to the airplane. First suitcase, we grabbed to the first. We walked to the first airplane. I did our walk around, you know, and we hopped in a plane, and we took off. And yes, it was, the mission was spin training. So we flew west of Montreal. Day was beautiful. Conditions was perfect. Nice temperatures. Summer morning. We arrived to the training area above the lake. And he demonstrated first spin for me. We rehearsed the procedure to enter and recover from the spin. He was very comfortable, in all notion what we're about to do. And basically, to enter the spin, you do it pretty much like every other airplane. We decided that we're going to climb to 3,600 feet. Power would be off at that time. Pull the power back, climb up, stall the airplane. You have that horn in a Cessna, and at that time apply the rudder in the direction of the spin, full rudder, while yoke is all the way aft, and airplane enters in a spin. So recovery procedure would be release the yoke in neutral, apply the opposite rudder, airplane would be diving a little, so you apply the power, he's out of the dive, and we are done, recover. So his demonstration and instructions were clear, and his demonstration was excellent, dead on. So it came my turn. I wasn't afraid, even though that spin is not pleasant maneuver. People are saying it is, people love doing it. I disagree with that anyhow. It was my turn. So I demonstrated this 5 times for him. We did 5 spins. And the only objection or critic that he had against me was I'm recovering too soon. I'm recovering in incipient stage. So as you know, when you actually enter the spin, this first phase of the spin, when you have that attitude of the airplane, that is called incipient spin. So I didn't let airplane develop the full spin. So I said fine, and I'll try not to. But as a human being, when you find yourself in that attitude and you're about to enter that full spin, you're bombing down, it's very difficult to naturally to let that progress, in a full spin. That's why I was recovering too early. And I decided that this time I'm not letting off those controls. I'm not pressing the opposite rudder until he say recover. And he told me, hold it until I tell you recover. Do not do anything, hold the inputs until I tell you that. So I was determined this time. I said, I'm not going to make fool out of myself. I'm going to make him proud. I'm comfortable now. I did 5 of them. And he said, we'll do this one, and then we are going home. And we had enough. This is spin number 6 of the day. And all right, ready. I was back at 3,500. I did exactly, as agreed, as taught. So 3,500 feet, I'm level, power back, start climbing. The horn is on, and this time, for some reason, I decided to go left. So I depressed full left rudder, full aft control, and I really stood on that rudder. I mean, I really pressed it. So basically, airplane went in a spin, and it's hard to count how many spins you do, because everything starts getting blurred, and you're bombing nose down and everything is spinning. So it's really hard to count them. But in my best recollection, it was about 1, 2, maybe 1.5, whatever, my best recollection. And at that time, it was totally cool. And he said, okay, recover, in that tone. So I was ready, and I let the yoke in a neutral position. I applied the opposite rudder, and nothing happened. The airplane continued its spin. Nose was down, we were continuing spin. And I would say that he was very fast. I would say that he didn't wait too long, and maybe 5 seconds, I don't know exactly, And he said, I have controls. And we already had this time together, 10 hours flying, and we learned about positive exchange of control. It was 2-way. I have controls, you have controls, we are done. So I said to him, you have controls. And I sat in that seat like this, And I looked down at my hands like this, and my initial feeling was, what an idiot I am. How could I not recover? I did not recover that airplane. What did I do wrong? Am I stupid? Some kind of a self-blame. And then that lasted just a split second. And I said to myself, okay, snap out of it. Don't blame yourself for anything, and just watch him and learn, So I looked at him, what is he doing? And he was working very fast, very fast. Obviously, I couldn't see his feet, but his legs were moving or whatever. He was doing little jobs on a yoke, nose down, whatever he could do, actually with his right hand. Then he gave few jobs of power. Power was off as I entered the spin. He was giving some jobs of the power. He was even touching the flaps, lowering the flaps, and his hands was, I would have to say, flying. He was really working it out, And at one point, and I just sat there and observed that, and at one point he pulled out the carb heat. And as you know, in Cessna 152 we had the carburetors, and carb heat is about totally different issue and has nothing to do with the spin recovery. So when he pulled carb heat and applied the carb heat, that was the first time that I realized that something is really wrong. And all this is happening in this spin, right? And I have to say that I didn't draw too much attention looking out. I was more looking at him. What is he doing? So what is he doing that I didn't? And airplane kept on that auto rotation and dropping down. So it took a little, and then I looked outside, and I noticed that we are not anymore in nose down kind of attitude, but I'm seeing horizon, and we are, horizon is turning. So at this point, we were in a flat spin.
You got flat.
So seeing that carb heat, seeing the horizon now like that, and realizing that we are really in a flat spin, I said to him, this is not recovering. and he was still doing his thing. He never stopped. He was fighting it as hard as he could to the last moment. And his reply to me was kind of a quick, no, it's not, Not that he was mad. He was just busy. And he continued his fight, all the way down. And at some point, I knew this is it. That we're not going to recover. We are now low. I see everything that is coming, and lake is right there. So I looked through my window, and also I kind of didn't brace myself at all, and I kind of looked through the window, and I decided I'm not going to look at the rock that I'm going to hit my head with. And I just totally relaxed. I sat in my seat and I closed my eyes. And next thing was like TV off. Like when you turn the TV off, it was like that. And then we hit that water, it was serious impact. And kind of after the TV off, everything was pitch black, and kind of confusion. And in my head, I kind of heard my own voice from behind me, telling me like, "You're alive." And I wasn't. It was more like, "What?" And voice was louder, but not yelling. "You're alive. You're alive. You're alive," like clear. And that's where I opened my eyes, or whatever, or maybe my eyes was open. I don't know, And everything was pitch black. And I looked back, and I saw green water from that lake. It was really green water, but I saw the light. I saw the sky. And I unbuckled my seat somehow, and I went for that light. And I evacuated the airplane. So in all this, unfortunately, I tried to, whatever. It was, I would have to say that it was a confusion, in my head. I wasn't aware yet of all injuries that I had, and injuries were serious. But it was a lot of confusion. I just didn't know what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. I really didn't know that. Now, maybe what saved me also is the fact that I'm very comfortable in the water. Back in Yugoslavia, my parents had a house on the seaside, and all summers and some parts of the year we spent there. And as a child, we were always going, and it is Adriatic Sea. So I'm a very good swimmer. I was even involved in swimming competition. So I am very comfortable in water. In water, I'm like in my bed, So anyways, my face surfaced out of that water, and I didn't see him. And basically, I thought that he's just as confused as I am, and that he just doesn't know what's left, right, up, down. All I need to do is go down, kind of pull him, grab him, and show him where to go. And I did that twice. And second time, I almost passed out. It was a lot of strength involved. And, my spine was broken in 2 places. My leg was broken. My ribs were broken. My lung was had it. Anyways, I'm not going to list all these injuries. They're irrelevant. And actually, all of that is irrelevant in this story. Anyhow, the fisherman showed up with a small boat, and his face, he came right to me. Boat was here, and his face was there, and it was a small boat. And I grabbed it, and I said to him, please dive. There's a pilot in the airplane. And he said to me, I don't dive. He was older man. And he grabbed my arm, and he was holding me. And at that time, some other, like, not a speedboat, but fast boat came around. And like I said, it was July, so there were a lot of people at the beach already. And they witnessed what happened. So a lot of whatever boats were there, they rushed to where airplane crashed. So on the bow of this boat was this, I remember him as well-built man in a bathing suit. So the speedboat came very fast and like in a curve like that. And then as a pilot over there took the power off, boat kind of, bowed down. And as boat bowed down, this guy jumped in, and I was at ease at that time because I knew he's going to go down. He's going to help. And we were bobbing there for a while, Oh, yeah, just before crash, David said, that was his last words, Mayday, 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 3 times. And that was TV off. And this guy, we were bobbing there. I really didn't have any sense of time, but to me appeared to be very long. So he reached over, grabbed the belt on my pants, and pulled me inside the boat. And basically, he then transported me to the beach, and there were a lot of people at the beach. And the ambulance came, and they took me to the hospital. And one thing that I will never forget, normally when you walk in a building, this is your vision. This is what you're looking at. You're looking surrounding around you. Maybe a quick glance at the floor. You don't stumble on something. But when they wheel you in a hospital, you're laying on this, and I remember the ceiling and these lights, neon lights, how they light it with neon pipes. That, I don't know why, left such a, I don't know what impact on me. I remember that very well. So from that point, I was in a doctor's care, and I was just confused. That confusion didn't actually, disappear for several days, actually. I guess I had a good concussion there, because every time after I would turn my head, my world would turn with me, You sustain for sure concussion. But I think that at the same time, my wife actually had a worse experience than I did, honestly. And what happened is that she knew I went flying. And basically, she received a phone call. She answered. It was police. And the person on the other side told her, your husband was involved in a traffic accident. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's flying. And the guy's like, yeah, flying accident. And my wife freaked out. She was alone with our daughter. My daughter was 7 years old at the time. So my wife said, is he okay? And the person on the phone told her there were 2 people in the airplane. One is alive, and one, unfortunately, is not.
Jesus Christ.
So if somebody would dump that on me, I don't even know how would I react. So she really, But my wife is a very strong woman. And thanks to her, I'm flying today also. Thanks to her help. Thanks to her support. So she ran to the neighbor's house, told him quickly what happened, and the head neighbor take care of our daughter. And she jumped in the car and drove to the hospital. And finally, when she arrived to the hospital, they told her that I'm the one that survived. So all that time, she didn't even know. Alone. So, I feel horrible for her. But at the same time, I learned to appreciate what kind of a strength and what kind of a strong person she is. Anywho, I didn't know that they didn't save David. And I learned that later on in a hospital after a few hours when they allowed my wife to come with me. And I said to her, how's David, And she's like, he didn't make it. and I freaked out. So that's all emotional part, you know, and that emotional part everybody would go through. But the point of all of this story is more about my experience with spin and what the spins are, and maybe message to other people that I have about spins and in general about safety. As after a few days when I was better, of course, police came to interview me, the NTSB came to interview me, and police was there to make sure there was no foul play, you know. NTSB is organization, as we all know, that does not. It's not a court. It's not the police. They are not there to point blame on anyone. They are there to investigate what happened, and if possible, find recommendations so something like this would not happen. But in all of this initial thing, the whole suspicions was pilot error. It was a pilot error, and I think that if I didn't make it, they would make it. They would conclude most likely that it was pilot's error, and in this particular case, my instructor's error. You know, because he was a pilot in command over there. If you're dual training, you're not pilot in command, and I was student with 13 hours. And I even told him that you want to blame me, a student at 13 hours, I don't even see how, you know. Of course, they draw his blood, my blood, all of that was clear, that there wasn't alcohol, that there wasn't drugs, that there wasn't nothing illegal. Of course, they always start with that. So what happened with that airplane? My story was consistent because I didn't lie. I know what I witnessed. I know what I went through, and my story was consistent, explaining to them to the point that his reactions was appropriate, and that he really fought to the last moment to save us. So they went through thorough investigation. And for people that are interested, you can post where they can download and look at report. And there were a few issues with the airplane that basically kind of what they say, holes in Swiss cheese align. And this happened. And you know, if you are looking at any aviation book, they will always tell you that accidents do not happen, just happened. Accidents are chain of events that lead to an accident. Every aviation book is going to tell you that. So in our case, airplane went the day before for 50 hours inspection. They found a broken spring at the rudders. Normally, to my understanding, this spring is there so when you depress rudder and then you remove your foot again, rudders would come back even, equal. That's one function of it. But the mechanic found that return spring was broken with some sub-assembly there, and they decided to remove the broken part, and because they didn't have one in a stock, they just reattached the cables, and they decided that this airplane is airworthy. Second one, what really happened is that the rudder of the airplane, due to some mechanical issues and some design issues from Cessna, basically jammed in a full deflection to the left side. So the way that assembly is there, to my understanding, you have this stopper, which was just like piece of metal, and there is also a bolt which is attached. So when you press the rudder, the head of the bolt would hit this stopper, and that would stop any further deflection of the rudder. But in this case, the head of the bolt was able to go below and beyond the stopper and jam in that position to lock. So according to report and according to investigation, when that happened, it was physically impossible by pressing the rudder pedal to unlock the rudder from that position. So when I stepped on that left rudder in attempt to really hold it until he tells me to recover, I pressed it and it went below and beyond the stopper, and the lock rudder in that position that we never had the chance to recover the airplane again. Now that is because of some damage on that assembly that we didn't know about. We didn't notice it on pre-flight. And also, my understanding from reporting, what they told me is that the elevator had to be in a full aft on a yoke and full rudder, and that would lock. So investigation really took time, and they were thorough. And there was a gentleman in charge of that investigation. I don't remember his name. Maybe he signed report. Maybe he didn't. He was South American name. And he really, really wanted to get to the bottom of that. And he was in charge of investigation. So they went through, a lot of people said, nah, that's pilot error. They didn't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah.
As you're talking about pilot error, I want to read something from the Transportation Safety Board from Transport Canada in your investigation report about you and your accident. This is under the factual information section. There's an image of your rudder horn. The rudder components and the front end of the aircraft were sent to the tsb Engineering Laboratory in Ottawa, Canada. In Ottawa, Ontario. It was observed that the rudder stop plate on the right-hand half of the rudder horn was firmly jammed behind its stop bolt on the fuselage. The rudder was deflected 34 degrees, measured perpendicular to the hinge line, whereas the maximum allowable deflection of the setting stops is 23 degrees. When the rudder was released from its jam, the deflection was 23 degrees. It required 36 pounds of steady pull on the trailing edge of the rudder to break the rudder out of its jammed position. This is after recovering the aircraft from the bottom of the lake post-accident. This steady pull of 36 pounds equated to 180 pounds if the force was applied to the rudder pedal. However, given that the direction of cable tended to increase the jamming by closing the horn, it would not have been possible to break the rudder jam with the application of right rudder. I'm not seeing the pilot error being the cause of the accident there.
Right, and I would say that that gentleman that I mentioned, I don't know did he sign report or somebody else signed it or anybody signed it, but he was really determined to find the cause of this. And even as report states, they went around other airports and they noticed the marks on other Cessnas 152, and they actually was able to prove that with full aft position of the yoke, without return spring and full rudder application, that every one of them would jam, just like our airplane jammed. So, as a result of this, actions were taken. And in report is also specified what actions were taken, but one of the action that they did in Canada is at the time that I started my training, private pilots were required to demonstrate the spins on their check ride. That's changed and removed. I don't know, was that in the United States at that time also, or it was removed after that accident? That was one action taken. The second action taken is that Cessna issued a recall on that assembly, that part, and they changed or modified the design of that stop bolt, so it is impossible for that to happen again. So those two things at least came out of this accident. So, when I think about that, I wonder that, well, it happened that I lived and he died. But I wonder if we both died in that accident, what would actual conclusion be? Now, the point that I really want to make to people is that I don't think that I survive by some kind of a miracle. I really don't think so. There's a thing that, I always did as that student pilot, I would, prior to every flight, I would really tighten my seatbelt. And today, with today's model, of course, you can't do it. I mean, with Cirrus, it's totally different.
Now you have an inertial reel, but your year of aircraft, it wasn't an inertial reel.
Right. So I think both airplanes still have that.
Older aircraft, you're looking at 60s, 70s, preceding that. 80s airplanes still have it. It's more of a 90s and everything after 2000, essentially. But you're seeing that with Piper, Cessna, the inertial seatbelt, just like we have in cars. They're all inertial seatbelts, except for antique cars, right? But how many people are driving antiques? But, in the flight training industry, how many people are flying 2010 or 2015 and newer aircraft? Probably less than 5%. Most of the flight training industry is still flying 1960s, 1970s garbage. And that's what it is. It's garbage. I mean, and that's not even disputable. You get into what is the lifespan of aluminum according to the FAA? It's 40 years. So why are 60s airplanes flying still? Because a lot of the flight training industry is cheap, and it's easier to buy 10 1960s airplanes than 2 2020 airplanes. That's a major problem in the flight training industry.
You touch this, right? And you're running the flight school. And you know that is, in your flight school, all equipment is new. All your airplanes are really new and, let's say, relatively new, few years old. This is all new technology. You have a lot of aircraft here. But I would say that that what you are operating here is pretty much new technology, new airplanes. Now, I would touch back, okay, maybe we didn't make it clear why did this happen. I mean, from report, it was incorrect maintenance, incomplete maintenance, some issues with design of the rudder. Those are the conclusions. And then, of course, there were another third element or whatever they listed in report, and I would really encourage people to read that report and not to listen to my interpretation of it. There was also issue with operations that were held in school. Snags. They said they had some snag book. As 13 hours student pilot, I never even heard about snag book. But
Snag, you mean a squawk sheet?
Yeah.
Do they call it squawk, or do you recall it being snag book? Is that just like a term they use in Canada?
I think in report is written as snag book.
Okay.
So it's a squawk sheet. But they also said that Transport Canada requires a journey logbook, which I never heard of as 13-hour pilot either. So none of this I didn't even know, and apparently all of this had to be logged in. Now, let me just touch on this one. I've been told that the way we hit the water, the way the whole accident happened, the forward speed of the airplane wasn't high, but it was just at that vertical speed. And that fact saved my life because we wasn't hurling forward, you know. Now,
It's interesting you brought that up. Do you know what speed at least indicated and really what you're essentially falling at when you're in a spin?
0.
It's right above stall speed. So it's actually pretty slow. And you saw in your recoveries, you don't get fast until you break the stall, and now you're in this big dive after you've broken the stall and stopped the rotation that you got to pull out of it prior to entering maneuvering speed. So you hit the water, as a matter of fact, just above stall speed, which in the 172, it's like 46 knots with full flaps. So your flaps were clean. The Cessna 152 was probably in the 40-something knots, high 30s, low 40 knots. Yeah.
So that forward speed wasn't existent, wasn't there. And the thing is, I mentioned the seatbelts, and to me, I'd like to. I'm talking about this, not about something, you know, some kind of a horror that I went through. This have to have some point. This is the first time I ever speak about this publicly. And I would like to make it meaningful. If we can make the people learn something from it, if I can tell them something. So, I mentioned that I believe that my instructor would be alive today if he had a tightened seatbelt. Every flight as a student pilot, I was really tightening that seatbelt to the point that I'm tight, man. I'm like in a space shuttle. And unfortunately, he did not do that. He left his shoulder harness loose.
Did his shoulder harness work? Meaning that I've seen in several older aircraft, I'm talking between 65 and 79, and even some early 80s, like up to 83, where that tightening device that you're talking about, sometimes it still falls off the connection, regardless how tight it is with a small movement. Was that kind of going on, or it was just loose?
I'm saying this because he had an extra little injury, which is not life-threatening injury. That really, I believe that his head contacted the dash, and I believe that his shoulder came out of the seatbelt, and his torso was loose when we impacted, and I was tied down with my seatbelt. So I was tied down, tight, and I believe that if he had that seatbelt properly adjusted, that would most likely save his life. Most likely. Now, I'm not putting any blame on him, because often instructors have to, react with the students, like you said. Maybe if I would freeze, he would have to do something, move more, be more free. Maybe if he had engine failure, he need to reach the keys. I don't know, But I believe that if there was an issue with the seatbelt, maybe it was broken. I don't know, So I believe that seatbelt in many ways saved my life. That's the one thing that I would really like to leave to people, to take it very seriously. Second thing I'd like to leave people to take very seriously is that the fact that this airplane was at 50-hour inspection day prior. All of us bring the car or airplane or whatever to shop, and following day it's fixed, it's brand new, it's excellent. They did their job. Don't believe that. Don't believe that easily. Trust, but verify. Ronald Reagan. So So that is the second thing that I would really like to say. And third one, do not skip your walk around. If there is something suspicious on that airplane, you're not a coward to ask your instructor. You're not a coward to report it. Make sure that everything kind of makes sense. You're not a mechanic, I understand that. But make sure that everything makes sense before you decide to take off. So these three things are, to me, very important, you know. Now, it would be valuable to know that flight before you had any issues or not. Talk to your instructor, talk to people around school, whichever way school keeps the records here, the snack book, verify that. So these are the things that I would really like to say to people, you know, to take it very seriously, because these things can quickly go out of the hands.
When you were in initial training, the why is important, which was a key component of what you said. When you were initial training on pre-flight inspection, you went around with a flight instructor at your school and he showed you how to do a pre-flight inspection, right? These mechanical components, did the instructor explain why you're checking what you're checking?
Yes. When it comes to my instructor, again, I don't know should I say his last name or not. I'm trying not to utter the respect, but maybe I should say his last name out of the respect. He was 24 years old, young man. He had about 1,000 or 1,500 hours of total flying. I don't know how many hours in a type it's in a report. He just completed his ATP, and he was a great guy. You know, in all honesty, I didn't get the chance to meet him because we didn't fly that much. Maybe you can find it.
The report said a lot of nice things about him. It had some investigatory comments on what their chief instructor said. I mean, it was a very comprehensive investigation because, you know, a real investigation is you interview everyone.
Right. Please find that part, and if you don't mind, read it.
Absolutely. The flight instructor occupied the right-hand seat. He was certified and qualified to conduct the flight in accordance with the existing regulations. He had a total flying time of 1,140 hours, with 1,000 hours on the aircraft type and about 645 hours of instructional time. He had recently passed the airline transport pilot license written exams. He was recognized by the chief instructor and his peers as a very serious flight instructor and as being truly professional in his work. There was no evidence that incapacitation or physiological factors affected the flight instructor's performance.
So
It's just such a real tragedy, man.
Right.
Especially with, he was about to go on to his next chapter.
yes,
He was the typical flight instructor going to their next chapter, which is pursuing their airline dream. And he was there. He was at the promulgated flight time.
Right.
He had already passed the writtens. So he was on his way out the door in a good sense. You know, he had his brushstroke in students' journeys towards their own goals. Yeah.
Moreover, that they didn't touch there is that he was also, I think, soon graduating university in Montreal. So aviation was not only thing that he was doing. He was working towards his bachelor's, I believe.
Did he have a family, kids, wife, anything?
No, he didn't have the wife or kids. He lived with his parents, and he had a peers.
Did
I mean,
you
the siblings.
did you get to meet his parents?
Yes. And his parents were devastated with what happened to him. Rightfully so. And I personally didn't have chance to know him personally. We never went after flight for a beer or something like that, or hang around just, to talk about other things but flying. Because I was working at the time, so my time dedicated to my flight training was short, in and out, debrief, see you tomorrow, or whatever day. So I didn't know him personally much, actually at all. But one thing though I know, and I repeated to the Transport Safety Board 1,000,001 time, is that he fought as much as he could, that he tried everything humanly possible to recover that spin.
All the way to the water.
All the way to the end. All the way to the end. And I don't think that he made any mistakes. I don't think that he asked me to do anything that he shouldn't have asked me to do. I don't think that he taught me wrong. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. It's, hard to live with that part. And it's been a long time ago, but here and there I do think of him, And I think that he was example young man as a person, as a pilot, as anything that I can say, So yes, that's what happened. And again, these lessons that I would like to convey to people again, take it very seriously. Pay attention to that seatbelt if you are flying those older airplanes. Please do your walk around properly. Do not trust, actually, let's say it again, trust but verify. When airplane comes for maintenance, they maybe forgot a wrench in the engine. I don't know, So get involved with the peers in a school. Get involved with other instructors. Get involved with people that flew that airplane before you, that flew that airplane yesterday. Trust but verify. That's what I would say. Now, one of the reasons that I ended up flying with you was exactly extra 300 and your upset recovery training, How did you come up with that, to offer that to the students? Because that's where I initially fall in love with this school.
Yeah, and again, it's a simple answer. There was really no innovation to it. The top two killers of private pilots, VFR and IMC, stall, spin, and pattern. Mm-hmm. When you read the FAA's Airplane Flying Handbook, when you read through the PHAC, upset prevention recovery training is a required training item for initial licensure. But you don't see it in most flight training programs, at least across the United States. I can't speak for other countries. I can just tell you FAA stuff. So I think the way most of the industry cheats on that, at least in the United States, and it's cheating because that's what it says. That's why this stat is important. It's a life and death thing, is a lot of arguable exposure to upset prevention recovery training is done in normal category airplanes, and you're actually not really doing upset prevention recovery training. There's an advisory circular. It's 137 Bravo. It's really the only mention and endorsement from the FAA on upset prevention recovery training. And it's a required training event for the Eclipse jet for the type rating, because there was accidents involved in that jet, and it stemmed from the pilot's inability to recover from certain unusual attitudes and upset prevention recovery training, a whole bunch of things. But the point of that is to answer your question is, okay, so UPRT is a required training event. So when we're developing a program, you need to have an aircraft specifically designated for UPRT. Why? Well, that's what the rules say, number one. And number two, are we doing this half-ass or are we going to be the best? So if you're going to be the best, and best is subjective, you need to incorporate the right program. So we just talked about an accident. So how could you quantify the best, right? We've got a 100% safety record. That's the number I'm most proud of. We have this last year we were 91% first attempt pass rate on practical tests. That's a cool number. Cool. Is it a big deal if someone busts the item they were nervous on in a practical test and they retrain for a couple of days and retest? No. Does that make them less of a professional pilot? Absolutely not, right? But the 100% safety record, it's safety general. People preach it, but did they really do it? How? Someone says they do it. Explain to me what you're doing in your program to promote safety, right? I was watching this congressional hearing and a congressman asked an aviation company, what are you specifically doing to make this situation safer? And, when you get into very large organizations, you just get bullshit answers. You get this blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what I'm asking. With specificity, break down what specific programs that you're implementing that are instrumental to safety go, right? And it can't be, we are working together and we are, well, it's like I just heard I heard a bunch of talking points, right? So to answer your question, the UPRT, having the extra 300, making it mandatory, any graduate that comes through our program as a student pilot goes through UPRT. They get the 137 Bravo endorsement. They get both spin endorsements for flight instructor. A lot of people think there's one. There's actually 2 out of 61, 65 hotel. That's not a mandatory item for a practical test until you go for your flight instructor initial. People here get them as a student pilot. So our program is definitely more comprehensive.
That I can appreciate beyond my ability to express it in words. Honestly, if you putting your students as you are to upset recovery training, you are providing that training in extra 300. You and your student are wearing the parachute. You put me through it, and I have to say that it really built the confidence. Rebuilt the confidence is something that I was always afraid after, But I think that ability to offer that to student in safe manner. A lot of people gonna hate what am I saying. They're gonna say spins are totally safe. I'm not saying they're not. I don't like them. I don't believe that we need to set a house on fire to practice the fire drill, But if in my case, I have a lot of objections about, spins being fun and safe. But at least with extra 300, with parachute on your back, with option B, let's say, you are safe. And if you are able to as a student pilot, to receive that early in your training, I think it's going to build your confidence. I think it's going to build your ability better than just talking about it or doing it in Cessna 152 or Cessna 172 built in 1963 or 75. That's what I like here. One question I never really asked you, what is the safety percentage in your company? Safety record?
100%.
100%.
Yeah, we've never had an accident, never had an injury, never had a fatality. That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, 100%.
That's impressive, really. I didn't know that. And I don't think that you reach 100% of anything by a fluke.
No.
So what did you do right? What are you doing then to have that kind of a record?
It's very calculated. First of all, new equipment. We don't fly old stuff. We sell a couple airplanes every year. We buy a couple airplanes every year. So you're flying new technology. So you take that variable out of old technology. The UPRT, another component of it. Another component of it is VFR and IMC is one of those two highest killer private pilots. Well, you know, when you're wearing a view limiting device, whether it be a hood or the foggles, you can still kind of see outside. So that 3 hours just for private pilot alone, most of that here is done in the clouds. We file IFR, we get the clearance, and we do what the FAA calls,
Wow.
we do what the FAA calls integrated instrument training. And then people have exposure to the clouds. So if one day inadvertently, the JFK Jr. scenario, not being instrument rated, over water in a moonless night, right? Martha's Vineyard, you don't have that graveyard spiral. You're not that statistic of spatial disorientation VFR and IMC. So that's another component of it.
That is amazing. Do any other schools are doing the same way, bring people in MC?
I can't say, you know, all schools, but I could, because there's over 1,000 schools in the United States. There's 20 in South Florida, you know what I mean? So it's good as the consumer, the applicant, the student, competition brings the best out of everyone, right? Here, I don't have any competition. I don't look at any of the schools in at least my area. I'm friendly with most of them except for the ones I don't really know, you know. Mm-hmm. So there's a sense of community, there's a sense of camaraderie with most organizations, at least here, right? And that goes not just training centers, but aviation, you know, charter companies, etc. But to finish your answer, we probably hire about 1% of applicants. So call it 50 to 100 applications a month. External hires, about 1%.
Do you ever hire your students and stuff?
External hires, 1%. You look at 100 applications that come in, and the selection process, it's good. It answers your question about what do you do. It's a calculated thing, the safety. It doesn't happen by itself. It's not, well, we're gonna be safe, it'll work itself out. No, it won't. You have to make it. All right, so, and that 1% of external hires, man, it really is the cream of the crop, and it's very hard to get selected, but there's always room at the top for the best. You know, I get that question all the time. How can I do this? There's always room at the top for the best. How do you be the best? Well, you're going to go through a selection process amongst your peers, prepare academically, flying skills, reading. A lot of people don't read. How can you teach if you don't understand aerodynamics? How can you teach if you've never read your POH? Or if you've not read everything that the FAA puts out as far as the PHAC, the Airplane Flying Handbook, the Aviation Instructor's Handbook, the Aviation Weather Handbook? How can you not read these things, but you're supposed to teach them? How do you not know everything in the ACS? To be a teacher, you know, when I think of a teacher, you know, when I'm a freshman in college and I go to a science class and I have a science professor, well, this guy, he knows everything. Look, ask him a question, he knows everything. He can give you a dissertation on one question you have, right? The selection process is not that difficult to weed people out from the hirer standpoint, from the interviewer. You can ask simple questions and you get dog shit answers.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll give you one secret of the trade, and we got to take a break. I feel like I shouldn't give this secret of the trade.
I don't think you should.
I'm going to because it'll help people.
Okay.
It'll help people that are pursuing something be successful. Your job interview is while you're training. You know, I tell people come in, there's an enrollment process our staff does, but when I meet with people for a chief instructor review, I say this with parents too. And they chuckle a little bit. I go, we don't discriminate on race, religion, gender, ethnicity, black, purple, Asian, white, anything. It doesn't matter. We do discriminate heavily on PIAs. You know what a PIA is?
Pia?
Pain in the ass. And then the students laugh and the
Right.
parents laugh. And I go, serious. For the easiest way to get kicked out of pilot training is being a pain in the ass.
That
You
is
can't-
yet new airplane aviation abbreviation
Yeah.
that can be added in a list.
Yeah.
Let's put that in name. You know, they have a glossary.
Yeah, Aeronautical Information Manual. Yeah, it's good. I'll submit that as a request. Cool. Let's take a break.
Roger that.
At about 8:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a flight instructor and a student took off on a local training flight from runway 25 at Montreal-Le Cèdre Aerodrome, Quebec. The student pilot was practicing spins and recoveries. The student initiated a spin to the left, his sixth of the day, at an altitude of 3,600 feet above mean sea level. The first 5 spins were to the right. The aircraft entered the spin normally. After 1.5 turns, the flight instructor asked the student to recover. The student applied pressure on the right rudder pedal, as taught by the flight instructor, and the rotation did not stop. The flight instructor took over the controls and applied pressure on the right rudder pedal to stop the rotation, but the rotation did not stop. The aircraft, by then, was established in a stabilized spin, rotating to the left and continuing its descent. The flight instructor applied full power for a moment, then full flaps to no avail. Throughout the recovery attempt, the flight instructor continued in his efforts to avoid the crash. The aircraft struck the surface of the Lac Saint-François. The student pilot sustained serious injuries, but managed to evacuate the sinking aircraft through the right rear window. He then tried to pull out the unconscious flight instructor, but without success. A fisherman close to the scene rescued the student and transported him ashore where emergency vehicles were standing by. The flight instructor did not evacuate the aircraft and died in the accident. That is your accident investigation report from the TSB from Transport Canada. That's your accident summary. Spin, loss of directional control with conclusionary evidence that you had a mechanical failure, that your rudder horn got stuck past your stops, that the TSB determined that no amount of right rudder pressure would unjam your rudder horn being jammed beyond the stops. Can you describe flying after that accident?
After that accident, once I got out of the hospital, once all of these interviews by police, by Transportation Safety Board, whoever, journalists, you know, it was in the papers, whatever. It was time for recovery. And I just couldn't be in a hospital anymore, you know. I was really fidgety there, whatever. And my wife emptied the main floor in our house, rented this high technology bed where you press the button and moves you there, moves you here, whatever you can imagine. And set up the house basically for me to be able. I was in a body cast, you know, my leg was in a cast. I really couldn't move, and she provided, all care possible that I could get. And after a while, maybe, I graduated from that bed over the year. I graduated from that bed to the walker, to the crutches, to the cane, and I was able to walk again normally. And therapy, physiotherapy. And at one point, I was still, I think, at the walker stage. And we were sitting on the back of the house on our porch, and I said to her, I will never fly again. And she kind of jumped off the chair almost and looked at me and she said, "Why? Why not?" And I was shocked by her reaction, And we talked about it. And she said, no, you have to go back and finish what you started. So that kind of a support from a person, that she went through what she went through, when they told her one is alive, one didn't make it, she didn't even know who they're talking about, and all that stuff, and her personal struggle to to give me all these sponge baths she did because I couldn't even get off the bed, and all of this stuff that come from her, to me was such a beautiful support that I have no words describing, really. And then I started to think about it, and year plus after, I was ready to go back flying. I was ready to dust myself and try again. And with her support, she motivated me not to sit the rest of my life on my couch and cry my beer, but exactly dust yourself, get up, try again. So I didn't want to go to same school anymore. If you read the report, maybe, you understand why or why not or whatever. So I wanted to find different school. And on east side of Montreal, southeast, they have another airport, Saint-Hubert, and a lot of schools there. And at one point, I found enough courage to call them up, ready to go back flying, ready to finish where I started. And chief flight instructor, she was lady. I don't remember her name anymore, and I don't want to say wrong name, but she was fantastic lady. I spoke to her. I told her who I was, and aviation is small community, and everybody knew about the accident, and it was in the papers and on a TV and whatnot. So she knew exactly who I was, and her words to me was, "Brian, if you come to our school, I think I have an excellent instructor to pair you with." I said, "Fine." I went. I spoke to her in her office briefly, and then she called my new instructor in. His name is Carlos Palacio. He was originally from Colombia, and he was flight instructor at that school. And the reason she paired us is that Carlos was a student flight instructor. Basically, he was training on his path. He was a private IFR, commercial, and CFI. And in his training, it was a night flight. He was with his instructor in DA-20, Katana DA-20, Diamond, 2-seat airplane. So they were taking off from that airport. They were taking off for a night flight. And at the same time, there was a Cessna 172 in vicinity flown by a fella who was not familiar with our airport. He was from somewhere else in Quebec. And this guy in a Cessna 172, he experienced complete electrical failure. 6-pack airplane, Cessna. He lost electricity. He was sitting in that cockpit pitch black. So he looked down. He saw the airport. He saw the runway. and he decided to land. So as he was descending with no lights, my instructor Carlos and his instructor was taking off. The two airplanes collided at 100 feet, about 100 feet above the runway because they took off. This guy was landing about 100 feet above the runway. The right wheel of the Cessna 172 hit the cockpit, and wheel wound up in between their two heads. And two airplanes tangled and spun down and crashed on the runway. And Carlos went back flying, and Carlos became flight instructor. And he was such a help and inspiration for me that with my wife's help, with his help, I think I had a best team that I possibly could have to overcome my own fears, my own doubts, and all these things. So I had an excellent support at home. I had excellent instructor who understood what I went through. And with that combination, I think I had a winning team. So I continue flying. I obtained my private pilot license, and I continue flying, and I'm still flying today.
Do you remember when you took your private pilot test?
I do. I remember that day.
What year was that?
That was, I think, in 2000.
And that was in Canada.
Yes.
You recently received your instrument rating.
Yes.
Was that 3 months ago?
No, about five months.
5 months ago?
Yeah.
Can you describe the difference in the Canadian private pilot check ride that you took and the instrument rating test that you took here, the FAA test in the US? Was there a difference in difficulty, keeping in mind there are different levels of tests? I'm talking about the organization of it, the standards of it. How long was the oral exam? With the FAA, we have an ACS. I'm sure Canada has something similar to that, right? So what were the similarities? Was it a drastically different test? Because the reason I'm asking is I've seen with other countries drastically different standards. And I've done training in Canada, specialized training later on after I got my ratings, and I saw there was a lot of similarities. That's why the US and Canada have a specific agreement where any country that you have a pilot certificate, you come to the United States and you go through a paperwork process and you can get an FAA private pilot certificate based on foreign license, and it has some restrictions and stuff. Even if you have an airline transport pilot certificate in another country, it comes down to a private pilot certificate. However, specifically with Canada and the US, a lot of people don't know about this, you can just take a simple written exam and the Canadian license will convert to an FAA private pilot certificate, not based on foreign license, with no restrictions as if you took it here. So you see with Canada and the US, there's a lot of similarities, and there's specific reciprocity with FAA and Canadian licenses. So that being said, was it almost the same standards? What was the difference?
You see, I took that private pilot check ride and exam 25 years ago. So I'm sure that some of these things changed. And if anything, one thing that Canadian check ride required at that time was spin to be performed by private pilot. Now, that for short, we know that changed, that they took that out, not necessary anymore. And I don't know what year that happened, but if I remember correctly, my private check ride at that time, of course, we had to do the written. And I remember, look, I have a lot of education under my belt. And I remember that particular written being really, you have tests with the fair questions, and then you have tests where they're really trying to confuse you. So it's deceiving, it's ambiguous questions, it's this, it's that. I think that they do that purposely. They do that here too. So I remember that written test, it was difficult, at least for me, but I think I scored well. And then the check ride, we did not have oral exam. I remember that. So check ride over there is the DP shows up, and you do the pre-flight check, and you go up. And you do all of these maneuvers you are required. I remember on my check ride, it was final was short field landing. It was engine failure somewhere in the woods. Things like that. You have to do your stalls, you have to do your turns, you have to do. So I don't know exactly how it's done here, but those were the things required. I don't remember what kind of a takeoff he asked me to do. Maybe short field, I don't know, maybe soft field. Yeah, he asked me soft field takeoff and short field landing. And I remember that engine failure because I almost messed up, And funny, I was flying day before with, not with my instructor, but with this female instructor that worked in a school. Her name was Sophie. She was great. And, as we were flying one more time, and we were going to practice all of this, and then following day is my check ride. So day before my check ride, private check ride, my instructor wasn't available, Carlos wasn't available, and I flew with this girl. Her name was Sophie. She was a great instructor. She was a really nice girl and everything. Actually, she ended up not being pilot, but she joined the ATC, went in ATC school and did that as a career. But Sophie and we took off, and she gave me engine failure, and she gave me engine failure on a bad spot. We were in some woods, whatever, and I didn't do well. And I said to her, well, tomorrow when he gives me engine failure, you have to have a little bit of luck. And she gave me that look, like, what? What are you talking about? And she said, no, it's not about luck. There is no such thing like good luck. You create your good luck. You find the solution, you land this airplane. So I remember that forever, and I really applied that in my life. But anyways, the check ride was, with all of those, I guess, basic maneuvers, and we didn't have oral. And before check ride, I don't know for what reason, was my DP late or something like that, or I show up too early, so I went and I pre-flight the plane already. So when he came, I was at the plane, and I told him it's pre-flight. I already did the pre-flight. And he's like, no, we have to do pre-flight together. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know. So he was almost upset about that. And I remember he asked me, what antenna is that? Blah, 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 really details, And I did the check ride and I passed it.
Good man.
Yeah.
Attention to detail, man.
Right. So the Canadian check ride was like that. Now, from my experience flying here in the United States, there are the differences. I would not say that there are differences, major differences. It's pretty much the same thing. But, for example, there is the F airspace, or it was. I don't know, did they change that? Been a long time since I flew in Canada. So, yeah, there's some differences, but I would not say that they are major, if any. There is some. And the only thing that I really find different is that I lived and learned to fly in Quebec, which is French-speaking Canadian province. So when you fly around with the small airplanes, people are speaking French. So and a lot of these people that speak French do not speak English. So you really have to be proficient, at least in aviation jargon, to know what's going on. If you're going to the new airport, if you're flying to an airport like Lake Okeechobee, everybody is on a radio and there's no tower and people are talking, you better understand what they're talking about. So that's the big difference, that I find between one and the other, of course.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you experienced flying coast to coast for the first time as a private pilot in the U.S.?
You know, to begin with, United States is a fascinating country in many aspects, and as you mentioned, geographical aspect of United States is just stunning. You have a tropics, you have a deserts, you have a mountains, just like you said. One thing though that struck me, you know, about United States flying coast to coast as we did, is the realization on all small airports that we landed and places that we spent night at, realization that America is not Miami or New York or Manhattan or LA or Chicago. America is totally different place. As many people that are not from United States, they never visit United States, think, oh man, everything is like beautiful high-rises and you know, downtowns. We've seen rural America also from this different perspective. So I remember some places that where we slept that was, you know, I think we couldn't even find a room to sleep because it was full of people that work on oil fields in Texas, where they live in these hotels. So,
Carlsbad, New Mexico.
right. So I was really happy that I experienced to see that part of America too. And normally you don't go to these places to visit. We flew, and you know, when we are either tired or we need the gas or it's time to call it a day, we didn't plan these places and say, okay, we're gonna stay in New Orleans, then we're gonna go to Vegas, then we're gonna stay, you know, we didn't do that. We just went winging it through the weather, and we went winging it through the mountains because the airplane that we flew was SR-20 Cirrus, not a turbo, and it was, I believe, summertime or May, late May. I don't remember exactly.
It's fucking July.
Was it July? Okay, okay. Yeah, you're right.
I make the point of that because you're mentioning mountains. I see the density altitude conversation.
Exactly.
And if we're going to have that conversation, the conditions were 30 degrees Celsius at the surface in July in a non-turbocharged airplane.
In the mountains. Now,
learning experiences for you.
You know, out of that trip, I will never forget the flight out of the Henderson, Nevada. That's basically Las Vegas. The Henderson Airport is just southeast of Las Vegas, I think. And there is a mountain range, and it is July. And we slept in Vegas actually that night. And around, I think, 10 a.m., we showed up at the airport. And I don't even remember what was the density altitude already, but I remember the temperature was close to 100 already at 10 a.m. So obviously density altitude was factor, and we decided to move on, and we took off. And I remember there was some moas, there was mountain range, there was some bad weather going on too, and around those mountains, and we were trying to climb out and get out to continue our trip west. And I took off, and we realized quickly that this airplane is not climbing, so ATC around us to allow us to climb above the airport, to reach the altitude, and then leave. And I was flying the airplane, and I was communicating with ATC, and I was listening to their instructions. And their instructions was climb, you know, fly this direction, climb this direction, that direction. They were vectoring me. And I was complacent and doing exactly what they were telling me to do. But in reality, what was happening is that flying in one direction, we were gaining maybe 100 feet per minute, maybe not even. And then circling the other direction, we were actually losing 100 feet. And we wasn't gaining anything reaching, I don't even remember how many thousands feet, what altitude was where this started to happen. So in one direction I was gaining, the other direction I was losing, but yet I was complacent. I was listening to them. And I remember I remember that our CHTs were getting high. I think at some point, I don't know, did we see red or just yellow cast messages, but CHTs were high. And well over 400, I think well over 420 or there. I remember that. And then you said, I have controls, and you started to communicate with them, and you found a solution for us to get out of there. Another thing that I would bring from that trip that I really learned from you, and comes again to density altitude, people that fly here in Florida, even in Canada where I flew from Quebec, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, every local pilot learned their own local little things. I was fortunate enough to fly around Aspen, and that's totally different flying. That's mountains flying. But anyways, on this trip, I remember as a density altitude be really an issue. And if you remember, you really taught me how to properly lean that airplane before takeoff with that density altitude. So, and these pilots from Quebec, I know a lot of people that come here from Quebec just to fly in the summer on vacation. A lot of them are not aware of thunderstorms that we are having here, and because I know when I moved down here, thunderstorms and these vertical development clouds are more than scary. If you would see that in Montreal, trust me, nobody would be flying around. So in Florida, we have a lot of these thunderstorms, and I think that these pilots from north, when they come down thinking that they're going to fly around sunny Florida, enjoy themselves in July and August, I wonder, would there be a good program to offer for people to understand Florida type of flying, to make them more aware? Everything you said about thunderstorm, about everything what you said now, to offer something to people that would be valuable to educate these pilots that come from the north in Florida, and to understand what thunderstorms are and how to avoid it. For me, flying here in Florida after flying in Canada and flying in Aspen, Florida, I've flown here for a while, and for people that are not from here and want to come and enjoy flying, I would recommend, that they familiarize themselves with weather, particular thunderstorms, to be very proficient on the radio and airspaces, because here, at least in Miami area, you know how that is. If you're not proficient on a radio as a pilot, and you're gonna fly around here, better brush up those skills, or go with a reputable flight school instructor and fly a little bit with them to show you that. And thirdly, I find that there is a lot of traffic around here. There is a training traffic, there is people that are coming and going, there's airlines, we have major airports here, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, all busy area, but yet beautiful area to fly around. I mean, my favorite trip is going from FXC east along the shore. You go under the Charlie with Fort Lauderdale, and then you pass Miami and all of that, and I think after that, Keys is stunning view. It's something, wow, out of this world.
I understand you went skydiving. That's why the chutes are there. Besides our little extra 300 excursion, and you did spins beautifully, man. On a serious note, all jokes aside, with the trauma that you endured back in '98 to hop into that airplane with me, not once, but twice, and go do spins, I'm really, really confident that if you were ever in a spin again, that you could recover and not be some panicked, post-traumatic person that is going to have a flashback to that, let go of the controls and let everybody go down. You did a beautiful job. And we did some pretty violent stuff, right?
We did.
That's kind of what that airplane is. When I see that airplane, when I see the extra and we're going to go strap ourselves in and go do what we have to do, I just think that airplane's middle name is Violence. Might as well just call, all airplanes are girls, might as well just call her Violence. So it's amazing how supportive your wife is. You had that accident, you got back into flying, and then I vaguely understand that you went skydiving. She was supportive of it, of your desire, because it was going to make you happy. The Key West skydive, the Keys dive, the skydive, I'm going to go do that, but I've never gone. Can you describe what that was like? Because you only went once, right?
Only once.
Okay.
Well, the whole thing in my case was funny, And actually at that time my daughter was just born. My daughter was just a few months old. And I worked for this company, and of course there's always, water cooler stories and whatever. So I went to water cooler, coffee machine, I don't remember, I think it was coffee machine. And there is a little, like a pamphlet, little note that somebody left. And it was one of the employees in a company. I didn't know him until that time. And he wrote there, like, if anybody is interested in going skydiving, welcome, call me, Kevin, in his extension. So I went back to my office, and it was 3 of us sharing the same room. And I'm like, guys, did you see that, the note? And they're like, yeah, we did. And I said, man, we really should go. It's something for the books, blah, blah, blah. And I started to pump them up. And long story short, we called Kevin, and off we go. So it was, again, somewhere west of Montreal. I don't remember the name of the airport or anything. I lost that recollection, But we went there, and rules for that skydiving trip were totally different. Today, they strap you on a instructor and you jump in a tandem and all that stuff. No, none of that was in Canada at those days. So basically, we received about 15 minutes training, and they basically told us how to exit the airplane and how to react once parachute opened. Now, the type of the parachute that we had was different than yours. At that time, you would strap the parachute and you had like a little pouch, and in that pouch was another smaller parachute with this big plastic ring, designed that you pull it with your hands and you throw it behind. So like I said, training was literally 15 minutes long. That's what you're going to do. You're going to sit, blah, blah, blah. So we come, I think the airplane was Cessna 206 or similar. I have pictures. I'm going to have to show it to you. I don't know, is it Cessna 180 something or 206? And the doors were...
I'm sorry to interrupt, man. Just as you're describing this sounds like a pretty fucking Mickey Mouse operation. Just
exactly.
Like I'm imagining like people wearing like the actual Mickey Mouse hats from Disney World, like just everything that you're saying.
No, we had these hockey helmets looking things,
Hockey helmets?
looking, small helmet like that.
Where was this?
Jesus.
This was in Canada?
91, 92, something like that. So we come to the airplane. Oh yeah, they gave us these jumpsuits too that we would wear over our uniforms. And I remember mine was ripped, and because I was tallest one there, and that's the only big one that they had. They gave it to me. Mine was ripped, and I'm like, who ripped the suit? And they said, a few weeks ago this guy went through the branches to the tree, so he got caught up a little bit, but the suit was really messed up. Anyways, it was orange, by the way, orange jumpsuit. And now we all come to the airport, to the airplane, And the plan was they give you one-way radio. You clip it on your chest, and you're supposed to listen to the instructions of your instructor on the ground, what to do. Cool. So we came to the airplane. Door on the airplane was removed, and it was just a piece of plexiglass that you would just slide and close it. And mind you, when we took off with that plane, that plexiglass was like bent inside. It was ridiculous. Anyways, we load the airplane. Kevin was with us, and Kevin was, by the way, parachuting in his sandals, and didn't even have a suit, nothing. And three of us and Kevin. So the pilot was trying to start the airplane. I did notice like oil stain below the propeller over there at the engine, but I didn't pay much attention. Anyways, pilot was trying to start this airplane and just wouldn't start. So at one point we got out of the plane and this and that, and finally the airplane started. We got back in, and we took off. So the plan was we are jumping from 3,000 feet, and we had a special exit strategy. Kevin would tell you, sit, at the edge of the airplane, at the edge of the airplane. One of your feet is going on a step, and there was another place for another foot, and you stick half of your body out of the airplane, looking in the direction that the airplane is flying. The Kevin would take that little parachute out of your pouch and hold it. So when Kevin taps you in the shoulder, you would just let go backwards like this out of the airplane. And clear instruction was, do not delay, because it might happen. The Kevin throw this parachute out, and you didn't exit the airplane, so we don't want your parachute to deploy while you are still holding yourself on the airframe. You can imagine the picture. So what I took from it, when he taps you in the shoulder, you have to go. It's not time to go. What? So okay, I was second one to exit the airplane because they were throwing out the heaviest guys first. So this guy Boyd, he was a big dude, he went first, and then it was my turn, and the Peter was the last one, and after him Kevin. So anyways, I sat there, man, I didn't expect that air rushing in you and whatever. We had these, they gave you these goggles, which were like piece of plastic just bent in some way, man. It was ridiculous. So anyways, I sat in that required position. He tapped me in the shoulder. I let go. And that experience I will never forget in my life, man. Like I exit the airplane, and what I experienced really is the whole plane was just like disappeared like rocket away from me. And I found myself in the air, it was a little bit, oh my God situation. And now I'm falling backwards, and I kind of bent to my right to grab myself or something in a desperation. And at that time, the parachute deployed between my body and my arm, and deployed up, and poof, open. And this snapped me around the harness, I had a bruise. I had a bruise on my whole right arm and my ribs, my body was like bruised, man. So, okay, now I'm hanging on this parachute. First thing that I noticed, okay, they have these two little loops that you're supposed to grab, and when you pull it down, the parachute would kind of steer on that. You're descending and steering on one side, and likewise on the other. So you have to maneuver this and fly yourself to the spot that they had marked in the grass at the airport. So one thing though, the strap that I had on my chest, where radio was hanging, was really tight on my chest when we boarded the airplane, when they put the parachute on me. But as I was hanging now on that parachute, that strap was like 4 inches away from my body on the front of me. And I didn't quite know, is that normal or not? And I was thinking, oh my God, this harness is gonna just collapse on me, open up, I'm gonna go down. So my wise plan was, I'm gonna put my hands through these little loops, and if that happened, I'm gonna just hold myself onto to these little loops, which would be impossible to do. Anyways, the flight was so peaceful. I thought it would be a lot of noise, flapping, whatnot, but it was so peaceful, you know. And after 20 seconds, I kind of loved it. You know, it was really good. And I tried turning on one side, tried turning on the other side. Somebody was talking on radio that I couldn't hear at all. It was like, Brian, you know, all I understood is random, Brian, you know. So I didn't understand any instruction, man. And given wind and stuff like that, and there was some, it is airport, so it's fairly open, but there was some power lines going on, there was some woods around, you know, going on, and there is this big farm. So I was kind of doing my best to steer over there, back to the airport, but I really didn't do a good job. So I landed maybe half a mile away from my target, and I landed into this farmer's field, which was plowed. And I don't know, I never been in a farmer's field before.
It's very soft dirt.
Soft dirt, but deep, man. Those plows are like knee deep, you know. So I remember from my training that they gave us that when they yell flare, you pull both of these down, which is supposed to slow down your vertical descent. That means flare. So you pull both of these down, that slows your vertical descent, and you're supposed to softly touch. So now, because I was half a mile away from them, maybe even more, who knows, I heard flare, you know, on my radio. So I yanked this like an animal, but I was too high, and wind was blowing in my back. So at that point, I kind of stopped in the air, maybe 10 foot above these plow grounds, perpendicular on these plow trenches. So I had a feeling that let's say when you take the baseball and you throw it as hard as you can, I had a feeling that I was that baseball, and now somebody threw me, you know, along the ground. So it was like violent, and I was in full flare. So I descended, I attempted some, and I was going fast forward. So I attempted some kind of a pedaling run, which really didn't work. It did work until I hit the first trench and I nose planted in the dirt. So I wasn't hurt or anything, you know, I just jumped and started winding that parachute, so I'm not dragged. And that was my parachuting experience. I walked to them in a shame because I missed the mark, but I think it could have been worse. So did I enjoy it? Yeah, maybe it was fun, but I thought I will not do this again. That was my parachuting experience.
It's one and done.
One and done, yeah.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
How you describe that is quite the experience. I feel like I was there.
Thank you.
What would you go again if I do the Keys one?
No.
Okay.
No, one and done. And
right.
you know, I think in the Keys or here in the United States or these days, they're not letting you going alone. They strap you to instructor and you go.
It's tandem, yeah.
Yeah,
You have to
tandem.
do X amount of tandem jumps before you can go solo. And one of the guys I trained here, he ended up starting first he went to be a skydive pilot for about 2 years. He flew the King Air, flew a couple different weird airplanes. I even went flying with him one time. We did a formation flight, got to see these people jump out of the back, did a flight with him in the cockpit. he's got the little switch that turns green. You look out, and everybody just dog piles out of this thing, you know, and they're in tandem, so they kind of wiggle out together. And then you hear a little, right when they're jumping out, you have like, it's usually a male instructor, and then a lot of the females right before they jump out, you hear them scream for a second, but the scream is only for a second because they just disappear. And, you know.
Yeah.
So,
no, that disappear thing is real.
Yeah, I would see the procedure they'd have is the person would always want to look down. So the instructors behind them would take their head, point it up, and then jump. Because the idea is if they look down, what are they going to do? They're going to instinctually try to grab something. And I know the danger of that, similar to flying airplanes, is you end up in a spin jumping out. And that is extremely problematic, right? Recoverable, but not the way you want to start your dive, right?
Yeah.
But with that, I think it's a good place to wrap up, unless there's anything else you want to bonus points in here.
I think we can talk forever, but I think we could wrap up.
Before we do, I have something for you.
Oh.
Well, first, this is for your wife.
Oh my God. Camus. Wow.
Thanks for
50th anniversary.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
inviting me over, and you know, you have such a beautiful home. It really,
Thank
when
you.
I walk in there, I get a sense of home, right? And your family is just so fantastic,
Thank you.
and so hospitable. And I know when your wife cracked that wine open, and she goes, "This is my favorite wine," and you know, it's cool that it's from Napa, and it's a fantastic wine. I had a good friend of mine come on the show, and that's his business now. It was music, and then now it's fashion and wine. So hopefully she likes it. Well, I'm sure she'll like it.
I'm sure
but
she will.
Add
Probably
it to
I might even like it more than she is, but you know, it is what it is. By the way, I have some for you too.
Whoa, but before you brought me something too. Okay,
Yeah.
I wanna see what it is in a second, and I got this for you.
Oh my God, what is that? Oh, a shirt. Oh, wow, thank you. Texas, Berichi Aviation. Why Texas?
There's significance there specifically for you, for our coast-to-coast trip. There was some shenanigans. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember when we were in Lubbock, Texas, and before we went to the hotel, we went out and got a few drinks. You went inside. We were drinking Jack Daniels. You went inside. I got 2 shots of Captain Morgan for us. It was the conclude the night shot. You walked out. Now, typically when someone walks out before they're going to have a drink, you would cheers or something. You just walked out, picked up the shot without saying a damn word, took it, and then you spit it out in the street in front of a bunch of people. So we already looked like lunatics, and then you added that. So I'll just never forget, man, that trip when we stopped in Lubbock for that weather deviation, you know, that weather diversion. You spitting the Captain Morgan out in the street and saying, "What the fuck is that?" When I saw that shirt, I was like, I'm getting this. And then
Thank you.
a lot of
That's
these shirts,
a good memory.
Well, you know, we put our flight school stuff on the back of it, so hopefully you can wear that and tell that story of why do you have a Texas shirt. Well, you did something in Texas that was hilarious, and I want you to keep, you know, retelling that story.
Thank you.
because
I
it was
remember
so
that.
good. Yeah.
I remember that. Well, I brought you something too. And in my defense, if you are expecting a little bit of whiskey and you get rum, it's kind of a different taste. But on a better note, I brought something to you too.
Nice.
Here's a little gift. I'm
Ooh,
excited.
gimme. You have it wrapped?
I'm excited. Actually, I didn't wrap it. my wife did. So
Okay. I can't wrap stuff either.
Right.
It looks like a 5-year-old wraps something if I do it. All right.
Do you know who is the manufacturer of that thing?
Glock.
Yep. Don't
Field.
tell me you have one.
No, I don't. Field knife.
That knife is basically used in NATO forces and in particular in Austrian army as knife and bayonet. So you're going to notice design on a knife is designed to be attached to the weapon. And it has, lift this a little bit, lift that a little, and watch your hand, don't cut yourself. So basically, it's designed for...
It comes pretty sharp too. It's lubricated.
It comes with this part is survival, so you can cut something. Of course, the design of the knife. This here is designed so your hand can't slip. And on the back, you're going to note a little hole on the handle. And that is designed to clip it to the weapon. So you might need it. Who knows? If you ever land in Everglades, you have your emergency pack, or your shovel might be useful one day. Hopefully, it's not. And if anything, use it to open up your Amazon packages.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna make this part of my kit, man. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.